Yeah, welcome everyone to our, I guess this is like what, the third or fourth time we've done this
Mhm.
workshop, Eugene. But I want to welcome all of you to the AWS CircleCI is it modernization workshop. So in this workshop, we will be covering a couple of topics. This workshop was developed by myself, CircleCI and AWS in conjunction to kind of give the community an idea of how to, understand, give the community a way to understand continuous delivery and all the concepts within continuous delivery, as well as leveraging disregard, leveraging AWS within the continuous delivery pipeline. So what we're going to be doing here is showing you all a little bit about continuous delivery, some of the concepts within continuous delivery, and then also how you can automate, uh, you know, uh, functions, software development type functions like testing or deploying code using CircleCI's continuous delivery platform, as well as deploying things like infrastructure clusters, elastic container service clusters, and more importantly, and more at least for me, it's one of the exciting pieces of this workshop is deploying an ECS cluster using Graviton to compute nodes, which are essentially powered by ARM processors. So yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of cool things. So yeah, let's jump right into, I guess, setting up the environment. So I'll turn it over to Eugene so he can kind of walk everyone through that. Oh yeah, there's also a link that is posted in our chat here. If you want to follow along, or I recommend you follow along, click the link. It's the one that says circleci.awsworkshop.io. By the way, you can follow along after this event. So, you know, if you kind of have to go, you can't stay through the whole event, go ahead and, you know, bookmark this link. Also, you can search for it and find it pretty easily. And then, you know, you can kind of work at your own pace. In this session, we're just going to go ahead and jump into, you know, going through all the modules, getting people set up. We're using an event engine mechanism, which is an AWS feature that allows us to run these workshops and allows you, the users, to not have to use an AWS account, right? So you can just leverage what Eugene is going to show you in a moment. So Eugene, take it away. Show them how to set this up so we can start doing some workshopping.
So I think we kind of completely forgot to do one thing in the very beginning. My name is Eugene. I'm a partner solutions architect here at AWS. I've had the pleasure to kind of work with Angel here over at CircleCI on working on developing this kind of like, workshop content. Angel, I'm going to pass it back to you just real quick for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, that was rude. Sorry about that. Yeah, so my name is Angel Rivera. I'm a developer advocate at CircleCI. My role is to essentially, you know, do community outreach for developers and tech community, and basically engage with all of you and understand how you're using technology, some of the struggles you're having with technology, and yeah, just doing things like this, education and inspiration and motivation. So I'm Angel. Oh, and I also wanted to say before, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A piece here, or you can raise your hand or whatever you want to do. But yeah, just ask your questions in the Q&A, probably the best way, so that we can kind of keep track of that. And then, you know, as we go through this workshop, there'll be moments where we'll stop so that people can catch up. So that's kind of how we're going to run it. Really, there's not that many people, so it should be fairly cool and interactive. So go ahead, Gene. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like, one thing I kind of want to just go over is if you are interested in kind of like, using this workshop, after to kind of either like walk it through like with your team, just wanted to do couple like, housekeeping items just for how to navigate this, this like, page. So if you start at the beginning, you click at the AWS sign, you're going to see the AWS Modernization Workshop with CircleCI. So we have written kind of like a bunch of kind of forward messages to kind of walk you through like what we're going to be doing today. One key note here is that on the base level, there is actually some changes that you might need to do. If you go down here, you're going to see this kind of drop down saying like the MP DevOps series or the Event Engine. So if you are using this workshop here, we want to be on the Event Engine side. But if you are kind of doing it on your own with your company or corporate AWS account, you can follow kind of like the non-EE version of this, which is going to be the MP DevOps Workshop Series. The difference here primarily is going to be the setup. So this would be the self-guided setup if you are on the base path. And then if you are not on the base path, you are going to be using the Event Engine, which changes this to the Event Engine setup. So today, what we're going to be doing is, like Angel was saying earlier, we're going to be kind of creating like a pipeline, deploying like an ECS cluster, deploying an ECS cluster with compute nodes that are ARM-based, and we'll go into a little bit of that later. Right now, I kind of want to just introduce to you all what Event Engine is. So Event Engine is an AWS tool that allows AWS like SAs to basically create AWS accounts for whatever purposes. So either it could be game day, which, sorry, I don't know why I'm bringing that up, but primarily for workshops, right? So essentially, you'll never have to worry about kind of paying for what you're doing. So as many of you know, when you're creating like the ECS cluster or any other type of AWS infrastructure, that's going to cost you money if you're not using like the right instance type and so on and so forth. So the main point here is that you're going to be given an Event Engine account, and I'll walk you through how you're going to be setting everything up and how you're going to be logging in. And after this workshop, you will have the use of that AWS account specifically to, maybe play around, try different things, and it will automatically terminate after 24 hours. So you'll have like the rest of the day to kind of play around with your AWS account and this workshop. And so one thing I also do want to also give out is for everyone here, please click the link, the dashboard.eventengine.run/login link. There's going to be a hash there. So if you kind of click it, it will take you to a page like this. And if anyone thinks that I am going way too fast, I am talking too quickly, please let me know. I'm more than happy to kind of just slow down and help answer any questions so that you guys can all get properly set up so that you're able to do this workshop alongside with us. And so today we are going to be kind of doing a couple of things for the setup. We're going to be creating a Cloud9 IDE workspace, which I'll let you know in a second. We're going to be creating an IAM role, which is going to allow the IDE workspace or the instance that we're going to be provisioning access to do whatever we needed to do. And then lastly, we're going to be configuring the Cloud9 workspace so that it's set up to be able to kind of, pull down like all the pull down all the kind of like workshop materials that we need to start this workshop. So if you click that Event Engine dashboard link, you should be on this page. Click accept and log in. You're going to want to click this email one-time password option, or you can log in with your Amazon.com retail account. Either one works. And so for me, since I am an AWS employee, I'm just going to click the Amazon employee link so that I'm able to authenticate properly into the workshop. So one thing I do want to mention is that I want to be able to, so there's an option right here to set your team name. So obviously there's not going to be any teams here, but what you can do is you can maybe just set it to your name. And what that does is that if you do need help with something, I can help you alongside as Angel was going through. But if you set your team name, then I will know, like, when you raise your hand and you say that you need help, I'm going to be able to see from a console, like who you are and be able to kind of like, go into your account to be able to kind of debug with you. And so as you see here, we have kind of gone through the email one-time password. So this will take a couple minutes to kind of to kind of be sent out. What is going to be in that email is going to be a confirmation code. And it's going to be a 6-digit confirmation code. And so when you do have it, you're going to put it into the appropriate slot, and then you're going to sign in. And if it's successful, then you're going to get this message right here, and it's going to redirect you onto this page. Oh, sorry, Steve. What was about the team name? Yeah. So the team name is something that was present here as a green box. So the reason why we want you to set a team name is that if you do have any issues, with going through this workshop as you're working through this with us, it will allow me to identify easier, which account is yours, so that I will be able to kind of log into your account as a kind of admin, and be able to kind of look at and see what is going on, so that I can help you out, get unstuck. Does that answer your question, Steve? Just your name. So when you say that hey, my name's Steve, I'm having an issue, you put that as your team name, then I'll be able to see that that's your account. So I'm gonna do a quick pause here. I just want to make sure, has everyone logged in to their AWS account and to their Event Engine account? I'm gonna also check on my end. I do see a couple folks claiming it. I see a couple of you have already logged into your AWS account, which is what we're going to be going over next. So in the event instruction, in the workshop instruction, you also see that there is an Open AWS Console button. So this is the button that we are referring to. And what you'll do is you're going to, you're going to see this kind of dashboard, the screen, and then you can just click the Open AWS Console, which will open a new tab. Whoops, I was in a previous AWS account. You're gonna open this link, and you're gonna be on an AWS Management Console. So a couple things I want to also call out here is you're gonna want to be able to make sure that you have you're in US East 1. So this event engine account, the AWS account, is used primarily for US East 1. So if you're gonna be in US West 2 or any other region, it's not really going to work. So make sure that you are in US East 1. And a note here as well is that this also includes the AWS access key and the AWS secret access key. We're going to need this so that we are able to kind of connect your specific AWS accounts with CircleCI's platform. This is be able to show, this is to do two things. One, ID which account that CircleCI is going to be kind of working with, and then two, these access keys are going to give CircleCI permissions to be able to kind of do what it needs to do to set up a CI/CD pipeline in your AWS account. And this pop-up is going to be right here. So you're going to see the AWS access keys and the secret access keys. And again, I will be kind of going through this later in this section. So we're going to be first setting up a Cloud9 instance. So Cloud9 is basically a IDE that allows you to kind of write write code or edit code. So one of the cool things that you're going to see is it has a pretty cool code editor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to search. We're going to go on to Cloud9. You can search for Cloud9, and then it will show up. And you're going to click that option. And you're going to land on this page. And so what you're going to do is you're going to create an environment. And what you can do is right here, we have an easy option for you to just kind of copy click and copy so that you can paste right here, CircleCI Workshop. You don't need to write in the description unless you want to. And then you can click next steps. And then you're going to be onto this environment settings page, and what you're going to be doing is you can use T2 micro, And that's going to be kind of like, free tier as you kind of move on. And so for using this as a code editor, we don't really need to have like a more, we don't need to have like a higher instance type. You're going to be using with the Amazon Linux 2. So you're going to leave all these kind of default settings. And you're going to click on next step. And then you're going to create this environment. So this is going to take probably like about a minute or two to kind of set up. So I'm going to open up another AWS console. And let's do this instead. I'm going to open the IDE. So when you create an environment, what you're doing is like when you go back to the Cloud9 dashboard, you're going to see that you created a CircleCI workshop. The type is going to be EC2. And so EC2, if you go onto the EC2 dashboard, you're actually also going to see that an instance is going to be running. Well, the instance is not running right now, but you're going to see that there is also an EC2 instance that reflects the fact that we are creating a Cloud9 instance for this workshop. And so it is still currently pending. And so there's a couple kind of like tips and tricks that you can do. You can like change it to a dark theme, which is what my current theme is. And luckily we have this done. So you can kind of exit out of this welcome page, but feel free to kind of like, read it as well should you choose. I'm going to edit out right now. I am going to go right here. But essentially, this is what a Cloud9 IDE workspace is going to look like. You kind of have a terminal. You basically have like your basic file structure, and we're going to be pulling down the workshop repo for this workshop. And I'll do that in just a second. So the next thing that we want to do, and you can also follow this deep link to create an IAM role with administrator access, but we're going to go into our IAM section. And what we want to do here is we want to go to roles. And we're going to create a role. Sorry about that. Let me mute my notification. And so here, you're going to choose kind of a use case. And so we are just going to do an EC2, create an EC2 instance role. And so for policy, we want to use administrator access. And so many of you probably are kind of wondering like, hey, like, why are you using administrator access? Just for the sake of this workshop, we want to be able to kind of just give our instance kind of rights to kind of like do what it needs to do. But in a kind of a production level environment, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you are following the principle of least privilege, that you only have permission to do what you really need to do, instead of just kind of having like full access to everything that you can do but not necessarily need to do. You can also click the copy here. We're going to call this our CircleCI workshop admin. Then we're going to create it. And so it'll say that the CircleCI workshop admin has been created. So the next thing we need to do is we need to attach this IAM role to our EC2 instance, our Cloud9 instance. So we're going to go back to EC2. And once we're here, we're going to click the specific instance that we're using, and we're going to go to action. And we're going to go to security, and we're going to modify the IAM role. So the current IAM role that the Cloud9 has is the default one. And we want to edit that so that we're able to actually use like the role, the permissions that are in this role, which is administrator access. And so you're going to drop down, and if you are able to kind of create the IAM role successfully, you'll see that in the drop down option. You're going to click it, and then you're going to save. And so I see that there's a bit more people kind of joining. So I kind of want to just recap quickly what we've done so far. If you have just joined, please look at the chat. Please log in to the Event Engine dashboard. To kind of re-summarize what we've been doing, when you click on that dashboard and you accept the terms and you log in, you're going to be given this option. You're going to want to select the email one-time password, or you can choose your Amazon.com retail account to log in. But basically, we just need an email from you so that we are able to send you a password, a 6-digit password that you're going to use to put into this kind of pop-up box right here. And when you sign in, it will say signing successful, and it'll redirect you to this page. And as I was kind of explaining earlier, there is going to be an option right here that says to kind of set your team name. That's the green button. If you want to, you can set your team name to be your name. And what that does is that on my console on my side, I can see, I can more easily identify your account. So as Angel is kind of walking through the rest of the workshop, if there are items that you're kind of stuck with and you need help, and you raise your hand and you let me know kind of like, hey, like, my name is Eugene. I'm having trouble with this. I will know who you are. I'll be able to kind of identify your account, log in, and be able to kind of help you out one-on-one. And so anyways, the instructions are kind of here. And if you do have any questions, please let me know. But I'm going to kind of carry on to the last part of the workshop, which is configuring the workshop specific requirements. And so to configure this workshop, to configure this Cloud9 workspace, what we're going to do a couple things. So one is going to say, like, I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Well, actually move this halfway. I'm going to go onto the top right corner, and there's going to be a cog, like a little cog icon. And once you're in your project settings, I want you to scroll down to your AWS settings. And once you are in your AWS settings, I want you to scroll down to the credentials and manage temporary credentials. So if I don't click this will be using the default credentials attached to this Cloud9 instance, or sorry, the role on this Cloud9 instance, which will give it kind of bare bones permissions. And so if you don't turn this option off, it will never use the IAM role that we created, which kind of has admin access. And so we're also going to be running a couple commands just to make sure that this has all the information. This kind of has all the like dependencies and everything else, and any other like smaller tools that you'll need for this workshop. So what you can do is you can just kind of click to copy, and then copy and paste it, and then just press enter, and then this will do everything for you. And as you're kind of going through this, and as your Cloud9 is downloading all these kind of items, just kind of quickly we'll walk through a couple of things. We don't want to we want to remove any existing credential files because it's like a fresh account. You probably don't have any. But if in order to kind of make sure that this workshop goes well and we are using the proper credentials and the proper permissions, we want to kind of remove that. We also want to make sure that the AWS region is set, and we want this to be set to US East 1. So as you can see, as we're exporting this, exporting this command right here, we are saying that the AWS region is US East 1. So if you are not in US East 1, if you see this, actually, if you're not in US East 1, you probably won't be able to even create this Cloud9 instance. But if for some reason you're able to, please make sure that this right here is US East 1. And lastly, we're going to make sure that we are validating that the IAM role is valid. And so just kind of want to do this. So if you press enter right here, it will determine whether your IAM role is valid. So if I click this manage temporary credentials, it will actually show the IAM role as not valid because it's no longer using the IAM role. So make sure that you have the manage temporary credentials turned off. Okay, so hopefully in the email that you've been given, like when you're registered for this workshop, that you have a Docker Hub kind of account created, that you have a sneak create access token, a sneak account created, a Terraform account created, and of course you have the AWS access keys. So I am actually going to probably hand this over to Angel. And Angel, I'm gonna let you talk to them about setting up their CircleCI dashboard. And then I will be present to kind of help out with anyone that needs to get their AWS access key token. And again, before I kind of stop sharing my screen, I just want to say one more thing. You're going to be able to get your access keys right here. These couple items right here. And so with that, let me know if there are any questions. I will gladly be able to kind of help out if there are any issues with the setup. And so Angel, I am going to hand it back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Eugene. I know that's a lot for folks. So maybe we'll take like, I don't know, 1 or 2 minutes, make sure folks are, get the Cloud9 stuff set up. Kind of blew through that really, really quickly. But I guess the next thing would be, let me share my screen. Please let us know if you're having any issues with anything. We're here to help. It looks like we have a question. I'm stuck on the attach IAM role screen. Marius Abi.
So sorry,
can you maybe?
Oh, Q&A right here.
Yeah, Q&A. Sorry. Yeah. So can you post, I guess, what you're experiencing in the chat, and we'll.
So Mario, let me see if you set your name. So, okay, I'm gonna go just quickly. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to just show you. So
yeah, go ahead.
Log out of that.
Go ahead, Eugene.
Yeah. I share my screen real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whoops, that's not how you share a screen. So we're going to kind of move out of this instance. And then we're going to be going onto your instance. So give me 1 second so I can do that. Okay, so let me just double check that you kind of created your IAM role. So we've created the CircleCI workshop admin. And so Mari, I think we'll go over to the EC2 dashboard right here. And so you kind of created your Cloud9 instance. You're going to click this. You're going to go to the action. You're going to go to security, and then you're going to modify this. So currently we're using the instance, like the default instance role. But if you kind of, click the drop down right here, you should be able to you should be able to see the workshop admin that you created. You're going to click that, and you're going to save it, but I'm going to let you do that. Is anyone else having issues with not having those permissions? Okay.
It says in a QA that it's saying the
IAM role is not
IAM
valid.
role is not valid. Yeah. Or those are disabled for Marius.
Just going to double check this real quick.
Does it have admin? It does.
This is a new issue I haven't encountered before. I'm going to be able to just kind of, I'll attach it for you. But that is strange that you don't have the permissions to modify this. So we've essentially attached this to, so IAM role is not valid. Carrie, let me help you out as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. And let me see. It's going to log in as a team role, which is the role that you're currently using. So I'm going to also just double check. All right, cool. So we have it for EC2. We have administrator access. Let's go back to the EC2 dashboard. So yes, we're going to make the recording available later. So Carrie, IAM role is not valid. So it looks like you haven't attached your IAM role from what it looks like here. So Carrie, why don't you try and remember, so sorry, go back to this page specifically. And go into the EC2 instance, click the specific, click the only instance that's available on the dashboard. And then go to the actions button, drop down to security, which will then have another drop down, which is modify IAM role. And from there, you should be able to modify your IAM role, like I was just showing earlier. And that should give you the ability to set that admin role. Yes, let's see, if you have a IAM role valid, then we're good. And sorry, Angel, I'm gonna just share real quick again, just because I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. It looks like
Yeah, go for it, man. Yeah.
All right, so I'm back here. Let me do this. So it looks like everyone has created their IAM role. So we're going to be on this page right here, the EC2 instance page. And so we're going to click the EC2 instance specifically. We're going to click this drop down, this action. It's going to show security. We're going to click that. And then we're going to click the modify IAM role. So if you, and so for the people that have the IAM role as like not valid, there's two reasons. There may be two reasons why. One, you may not have attached the role. And so if you didn't attach the role, then it should look something like this, right? It should say choose IAM role. And so you're going to drop down, you're going to click the CircleCI Workshop Admin, you're going to save. Now, let me go to Cloud9 real quick. Now, there's another reason why your IAM role may not be valid. So if you go into your Cloud9 instance, one thing that we want to do here is this is going to be in the workshop section right here. Whoops, where's my chat? It's going to be on this link I put into the chat. It's going to say select AWS settings and turn off AWS managed temporary credentials. So if we click this cog right here on the top right, and we go scroll down to the AWS settings, and if we scroll down here, you're going to see this temporary credentials. This should be red or have an X or on the left side. The reason why we do that is because if we just do an AWS STS get caller identity, you're gonna see that the ARN the ARN of the role that we're using is going to be here, right? It's going to be an assumed role, and it's going to be the CircleCI Workshop Admin. Now, if we click this and we don't set this, turn this manage temporary credentials off, and we do that, it's just going to be using your default kind of like, assumed team role. And we don't want that. So we want this so that we are able to kind of give this instance the admin access that it needs. And so, whoops, let's try that one more time. And once you turn it off, you should be able to see that. So the CircleCI Workshop Admin. And so if you are able to be here and you were able to run this last line of the command, you should get the IAM role valid prompt. Okay. So yeah, please keep asking questions. We are here to help you and make sure that you are unstuck. So yeah, please keep asking in the Q&A, and I'll be here to help you out. For now, I'm going to hand it back to Angel. So just wanted to check if anyone else has any questions, please put in the Q&A.
All right, sounds like hopefully we've got everyone set up in the Cloud IDE bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and press on, and yeah, as people, I'll be stopping in different places, so make sure everyone's kind of caught up. But I'm going to continue on. So let's go ahead and share some screens here. All right, I think, yeah. All right, good. You should see, Eugene, are we seeing the code editor? Awesome, cool.
And I think, Angel, just real quick, I think before we kind of talk more about the config YAML, maybe we could maybe show kind of walking through the CircleCI like dashboard app, because I think we have reintroduced, sorry, not reintroduced, we have introduced kind of like, new setup instructions. And we just want to make sure that one, if you have a GitHub account, it will make the sign up process a lot easier.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. I don't think we adjusted for that, huh? So yeah, I would recommend, let me log out, I guess, and then log back in. So one of the things that we asked you to register for, well, now it's logging me right in. Great. So one of the things we asked you to do before the event was to log in. Okay, so log in. Here we go. Yeah, this is a new button. I would recommend for this, we just log in with GitHub if you have it. It's just a quicker, easier way. But if you want later, come back and log in with an email account. We are basically transitioning. CircleCI just used to have a basically an OAuth, login using either GitHub or Bitbucket. But we are now building our own permission structure within CircleCI or user policy, or I'm sorry, user control policy. So yeah, you're gonna have to, moving forward, create accounts, or we will just take whatever you have and create a new account for you. So you just click on login with GitHub. It's going to ask you to do a bunch of things like authorized. I've already done it, so it won't ask me, but you may see a different process. Just go ahead and click through and say yes to all the things. And you should actually be at a screen where, unlike this, and we'll walk through setting up this project, right, in a moment. So let's just jump over. I'm going to just go along with the workshop. I jumped over to Event Engine, so it's the same as what you've been going through. Eugene, did you leave off at, I guess, in this screen, right? The setup.
The setting up CircleCI.
Yeah. So yeah, this screen, I need to update this. Thank you. But essentially, what we have here is you wiring up. So once you log in and set up your account, you can just go to the CircleCI dashboard. But before you do that, hopefully you've set up the Cloud9 instance to have your GitHub SSH keys, right? So that you don't have to, or so that you can access the code base. What you want to do is, again, let me go back, click on this link up here in this 1.6 page, the example project repository. So what you want to do is click that. It'll take you to this code base or this project. Please fork this. This is where you'll be able to, fork this project into your own account on GitHub. And then what you want to do is clone it locally, right? So make sure that you have SSH clicked. copy the URL, and then, run a command to git clone this locally into the IDE. All the instructions are kind of here anyway. So if you follow, well, let's go back. Actually, it's in the 1.5. So yeah, all of the instructions are in 1.5 to clone all this and get you up and running. So go ahead and do that. But once you have that all set up, you're in the CircleCI dashboard. And what you're going to do is see the AWS CircleCI Modernization Workshop code project that you just forked in your account. What you want to do is click this setup button, and you're going to walk through we kind of walk you through a kind of a setup that enables you to just wire up your account. Wire up your project with your account on CircleCI, so that what you're doing here is basically telling GitHub that CircleCI is allowed to access the project, and then CircleCI detects it, and then you're setting up the project, meaning you're telling CircleCI to start monitoring this project on GitHub for changes. All you have to do is set up new project and just kind of jump through all the steps. Just take the defaults. It already has a config file, so you can skip this step at the end of the dialogues and just click that all the way through. And then finally, you can use the existing config, and then you start the build button. And at the end of that, if you go back to the pipeline screen, you should see something like this. This one here. And what it's basically doing is showing you that the default configuration file has been run. And I'll get into what the configuration file is in a moment, but just ensure that that's happened. I'll stop here real quick and ask if anyone is having issues with this, or if they're all caught up before I continue. If you are, let me know, or if you're not, let us know. And if there's not too many people that are behind, we can continue on. So I'll wait like a minute or so, or maybe 30 seconds, just to keep things moving. I'm not a big fan of dead air. So
hey, Angel, I'm going to do one thing real quick. I'm going to actually take over because I think there's going to be quite a bit of questions. Our 1.1 to 1.4 prerequisites to get to 1.5. So 1.1 to 1.4 are going to be how is going to be the tokens and the access keys that you're going to need, so that CircleCI as a platform knows, which Docker Hub account you're using, which Snyk account you're using, which Terraform account you're going to be using. And so that's kind of how they deal with kind of like multi-tenancy, is so that, obviously there's going to be millions of users on Docker Hub, millions of users on Snyk, millions of users on Terraform, and they want to be able to kind of differentiate. And that is how, and that's there's a really long-winded way of saying that yes, in order to kind of go through the rest of the lab, in order to build a successful pipeline on your CircleCI dashboard, you're going to need those API tokens, API keys, and so on and so forth. But if you don't have it, don't worry too much. You can still follow along with us. I think it's going to be very important for you to kind of see the config YAML, which Angel had before. And you just kind of want to see how easy it is that once you have kind of those tokens to be able to give CircleCI those permissions, how easy it is to kind of set everything up. So I'm going to share my screen real quick again to kind of get here. And the reason why is primarily because for those of you, when you get to 1.5, so 1.4, the most important thing here is that you're going to get your access keys right here. Okay, so that is going to be pretty straightforward. This set of instruction is actually really for if you're doing it on your own AWS account, and so you can create your own user and you can create a access key that way. but since you're using an Event Engine account, that's been given for you. So when we get to a 1.5, you're going to set up SSH with your GitHub account. And so you're not gonna, if you don't set up SSH on your GitHub account, you're not gonna be able to actually, pull down or git clone the workshop, the necessary repository that you need to finish this workshop. So for example, we're gonna go here. I'm gonna go back to my CircleCI dashboard. And it's going to say use it to generate kind of your SSH public key. So I'm going to write at amazon.com because my amazon.com email is linked to my GitHub. You're just going to press enter 3 times. And right here, you're going to do this. So we've created a public key. Now, what we really want to do is we're going to copy the public key, which will then kind of show you right here. If you go to your GitHub account, and you go to your top right, you're going to want to go to settings. And again, all the instructions are here. So if I am going a little bit fast, there are some instructions right here to kind of help you out. And so once we're here, what we want to do is we want to go to the SSH and GPG keys. So as you can see, since we've done this multiple times, there are multiple keys. So I'm going to delete some of my keys since they're no longer working because that specific AWS account that I created it in, the Event Engine account, has been deprecated. So I'm going to create a new SSH key, and we're going to do the CircleCI DevDay APAC. And so if you were able to run the cat command earlier and you're able to kind of copy your public key, you should be able to do this. Okay, I didn't do that right. Let's go back here. You're going to want to do this. And hold on. So sorry. This is going to set the public key. You're going to copy and paste this here. And you're going to add that SSH key. So it's going to tell me, and hopefully I remember my password. Awesome. So it will say that you never used this before, but once you've added this key, what you can now do is we're going to fork over this repository. So this repository I kind of already have. So let me go into this. So we're seeing a lot of forks. Let me go to my repositories. So let me kind of remove this from, actually, I don't need to remove this. So once you fork over this specific repository right here, forked over right here, you will see this option. So let's go here, you're gonna fork it. You're going to put it into wherever you need to put it into, whichever organization in your GitHub. And then you're going to have this. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to code. You're going to click the SSH option. You're going to copy, which has a copy, click to copy right here as well. And what you're going to do is in your Cloud9 environment, you're going to do git clone. Whoa. I don't. So yeah, sorry, that looked a little bit weird, but you're going to do something like this, git clone, and then you're going to copy that. And it's going to tell you, are you sure you want to connect with this? I want to say yes. So if you see right here, if you successfully cloned it, you're going to go here and you're going to be able to kind of see that you downloaded the file. And if you go back to your GitHub repository, if you go back to your GitHub, settings, you're going to see that the SSH key is now active because we've used it within the last week. I just used it a couple seconds ago. And lastly, one thing I also do want to mention here is that once you've forked everything over, you may be prompted to set your GitHub passwords, but that should be fine. One thing I also do want to mention is that once you set up your CircleCI dashboard, you also want to be able to kind of configure your environment variables and all of that. One thing that is not written in the instructions, but you'll need this is right here on the Cloud9 IDE, there's a small toggle button right here. And we really want to show the show hidden files. So that's anything with a dot in front of it. And so this hidden file is going to be really important. And I'll let Angel kind of explain more, but just kind of show you that because there's a .CircleCI hidden folder with the config YAML. And this is really going to be kind of the backbone. This is going to be the skeleton. This is going to be the architecture, whatever you want to call it, of how you're going to design your CI/CD pipeline. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back off to Angel. But if you do have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to ask in the Q&A, and I'm more than happy to help you one-on-one.
All right, Eugene, thanks, man. Yeah, this workshop is pretty intense. There's a lot of moving parts, but you'll see why we did this, and hopefully you'll learn something. So, right. So yes, all of the things in the setting up piece are required for you to continue, successfully continue this lab. So one of the things that, and by the way, like all of these accounts and stuff that we have you kind of signing up for and getting are actually excellent tools, and probably tools you'll be using if you're in the DevOps space or even as a developer. But the reason why we had you do all that, right, like get a Docker Hub API access token, Sneak access token, Terraform Cloud access token, and an AWS access keys and tokens, is for you to set them up in your project, right? So imagine your pipeline is basically automation that's going to do things for you, right? So let's say you want to create an AWS ECS cluster, which is what we're going to do later using Terraform. You're going to need a few things, and the pipeline, the automation is going to basically call out to different services like Docker Hub, like Sneak, like Terraform, and AWS, right, to create these things. So the way that we kind of enable things in your pipeline, right? So these are sensitive data. These keys are very sensitive in the sense that, right, if they get exposed or compromised, you can have a really bad day, right? Someone can take over your systems and your services, and just have a really bad day. So in order for CircleCI to be effective as an automation tool, we actually need some access, right? So every system has to give, we have to be authorized and granted access. And we do this in the form of keys, right? So in CircleCI, we're just going to set up what we call environment variables. It's no different than the environment variable on your computer, right, or on a server. But what you're going to do is define those things. And this is where the list of environment variables we're going to need for this whole project or this whole lab. One thing to note is, since we are using the Event Engine, you're going to need this environment variable in these quotes here, which is the AWS_session_token, which Eugene showed you earlier how to get. But at the end of the day, right, what you're going to do is just follow the instructions here. Just click on your project settings, environment variables, and I could walk through that real quick. So with my project, let's say I'll show you from the main thing here. We have a little hamburger here. Just click on the project settings for that project. And then you click over here on environment variables. And then, just add everything you want, right? Everything you need through here. Just click the button. Make sure that there's no spaces at the end of your name or any of the values that you have. But once you have everything, just add and then continue on until you build out the list that you need. Now, mine looks a little different because I have a couple of other things I was doing, but don't mind this screen. Pay attention to the one that's here. So these are the names of the environment variables, and then the values are going to be specific to you. At the end of the day, you can cut and paste these names and then their values into that. But what you really want to see is a screen that looks like this one here. And yeah, this is the right combination or list of environment variables. Once you have those there, let's just jump into the next section module, which is talking about a continuous integration, right? So with continuous delivery, you have this concept of continuous integration, continuous deployment. We're going to talk about all those things and then some. But what I'm going to do is just jump right into the introduction of the configuration YAML. So basically the way you define your CI/CD pipeline. So the way that you define, let me just get out of this. The way that you define this thing here, this pipeline, this is a pipeline, is by using the config.yaml file. Now, if we go back here, as you can see, right, this is just a simple kind of explanation of what that kind of looks like. It's essentially YAML, but it's a specific YAML to CircleCI, so we understand what the keys are and all the bits inside of that. The concept of CircleCI is essentially you have a let me just jump over to my code editor. You have a if we go here, you have inside the project, you have a folder called .circleci, and in there, there's a config.yaml file. And yes, Eugene's right. Make sure that your indentations in your YAML file are correct, right, or at least aligned. YAML is sensitive to indentation, so make sure that you have it properly set up when we do this. Now we'll be cutting and pasting. Excuse me. We'll be cutting and pasting from the workshop page, so that shouldn't be an issue. But occasionally it does become an issue, and you'll know when it happens. So this file here, right, was what we're going to be editing throughout this this workshop. But again, this is the actual directives or the definition for your pipeline. This version number here is essentially the version of the backend platform. So CircleCI uses this to enact or execute your pipelines in a specific version. Currently, 2.1 is the most current, so we're going to be using that today. And here's a key for orbs, right? It's just essentially we have this concept of packaged functionality. So what we try to do here is make it easier for our customers to encapsulate functionality. We build a lot of orbs. We just call them orbs. CircleCI likes to stick to round or round names, right, for features and stuff. For the most part,
objects for
circular objects. There you go. So orbs is what we call our kind of encapsulated functionality. And we're going to be showing you some of that as well. But at the moment, let's just move on to the concepts of CircleCI and this lab here. So one of the things I want to talk about real quick in the config.yaml file, and by the way, there's going to be links to things here, so you can look these up later, but they're essentially 4 elements to our YAML, key elements or core elements. The first is going to be jobs, right? So it's a list. Jobs is our list or grouping of commands that produces a desired result when executed. And then those jobs are going to need executors, right? So executors are essentially the runtime where your code or your pipeline is going to run, or the job. Let me rephrase that. Executors are the runtimes that your jobs are going to run in, right? So obviously, right, if code changes, we're going to kick off a pipeline and we're going to kick off a job. That job needs to run somewhere, and it's going to be in what we call an executor. So it can be in the form of a Docker image. It could be in the form of a virtual machine or a Mac OS iOS machine, or even a Windows machine and a Graviton 2 machine, right? So we'll get into some of that in a moment. But jobs, executors, and then commands are essentially the most atomic piece to the pipeline, which is essentially running something, right? It could be an npm install command, it could be a Docker run command, whatever it is that you want to do in the automation. That's what a command represents. And finally, workflows are the aggregate, not the aggregation, the orchestration of jobs, right? So if you define a bunch of jobs, right, they're just sitting there. They're not going to do anything unless you have a workflow defined. And then that workflow basically says, hey, run this job in this order and in this manner, which again, we're going to get into very shortly. So the first thing we're going to cover here is testing, right? So we should always all be testing our code. I'm not going to jump into like the details here, but you can read about testing if you're not familiar here. I'm sure we all are, right? But I just wanted to kind of call out that testing is really important, and it's always, almost always an essential job or jobs in a CI/CD pipeline. So what we're going to do is build our first job in our pipeline, and the first job that first thing we're going to do is basically set up our pipeline. So let's go ahead and copy this code here, and then I'm going to jump over to my editor and Control A, blow away all this stuff, right? The defaults, because we don't really care or need it. Then I'm going to save that. So just paste that in, right? Next thing, just I would make sure that you do a new line and make sure that you're at the beginning of the line, because YAML is tricky sometimes and with indentation. So what I'm going to do next is roll down to I'm going to skip all the stuff in between. I think I covered all the elements, but what we're going to do is basically copy this this job, right? So we're going to create a jobs list, and then we're going to add our first job, which is called run test. So let's go ahead and do that. And what I've done here is created a jobs list, right? So this jobs list with the colon key here that signifies the list, and then we have to indent, and then we're going to create a run test. Now, remember when I talked about executors, this is the line for the executor. And all you have to really add here is essentially an image tag, which tells the Docker executor which image to run. In this case, we're just going to run a node 14 image, since our application is a node application. And by the way, don't worry about the application itself. This is essentially a simple node application. It's just a web page. So what we're going to do next is add some more. So now that we have our job defined, our executor defined, now we can start adding commands, right? So remember I said commands are a key element to CircleCI. But in order to do that within a job, you have to define a steps command. So this is another list of commands that we're going to execute in this job to achieve a specific result. In this case, I want to test my code. I want to run my unit tests against this code change, or the code changes that CircleCI detects. The first thing here is a checkout command. This is just an alias for a git clone. So in order for us to run our tests against our code, we need to pull down the code changes that CircleCI detected, right? So again, this is an alias that we create at CircleCI. It just means git clone the current changes, and that's what the checkout command does. Next, we're going to be running installation of our node packages. So normally you would see this, right, as a command. It'd be a run command or something. We're using orbs here, so this is a good way to show you what an orb definition is. I just highlighted in the orbs key here, in the orbs list, is we're using a node orb. So in CircleCI we have this encapsulated functionality for node projects. It's a real simple way, easy way to kind of define and execute commands without having to type a bunch of things. And by the way, this is enabling two things. It enables you to maintain functionality in a centrally located or controlled area. So this node orb is a centrally managed functionality. And the other benefit of using an orb is it lessens the volume or the amount of YAML you have to write, right? So it's there to be kind of a dry, do not repeat. So that's what an orb kind of does. Now, as you can see, I named this, this is like an import statement for orbs up here, right, in this key. So I've defined, hey, I'm going to use a node orb. I've actually named it node, so I'm using node. And then this / indicates that we're going to use a command. and the command is install packages. Now this command has some parameters, right? Like, hey, do you want to override the CI command, which is the default? I am saying yes, I just want to run an npm install. And then the cache path is project node modules. Now, the reason why this exists here is because, CircleCI has this capability of caching dependencies or caching things in your pipeline, which essentially speeds things up, right? So caching enables you to bring down only the changes in your code or in your dependencies versus bringing down all of the things. So you're not downloading all the things all the time with every pipeline run, right? If you're using this cache mechanism, it's going to restore your cache for you if it detects it, and it's also going to save it. But you have to define like where that is. In this case, this is a node project, and we're going to save our cache from this here, right? The nodes module. Once you have that in place, let's go ahead and jump over to the next step, which is actually creating a run command to run our test. So I'm going to jump over to the lab again. Now we're talking about run commands, right? This is how you would, outside of an orb, actually run something. In this case, we're just going to copy this code again, and then I'm going to paste it, and we'll talk about it real quick. But what we've done here is added this run block here, right? And all I'm doing here is creating a run command. I'm giving it a name, which is run unit test. And you'll see what this does later. This key here just gives you the ability to name your run command, and then it shows up really nicely in the dashboard, which you'll see in a moment, or at least further down the road. So in this case here, we're going to do we're going to create, the run command has another element, which is the actual command key. And in this case, you can actually define a command. In YAML, we have this concept of multi-line within a key, and you have to indicate that with a pipe. That's why the pipe is there. But I'm going to run a few commands, which is essentially testing my node application with two different libraries, right? So we've done all this. We've created our new test execution, right? So we're going to test our code using the tests in this folder, which is the test.js. Essentially what we're doing is we're just checking for specific OK200, right? Make sure the application is running and is resulting in a OK200 when we query it, and also checking for static text in the system. And again, we'll go over those tests in a few because there's lots of tests that are going to be run here later. And then finally, we have this store test results. So once we store once we run our test, we can store the results and pin it to the CircleCI dashboard, which you don't see it here right now because we didn't have any tests run, but you'll see them shortly when we run the pipeline. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you at one time, but we've essentially stopped here, and that's the end of this module. So at the very end, at the very least, your pipeline should look like this. And if it hasn't, you can just cut and paste this bit here and paste it into the editor. At this point, I'd recommend that you save your file, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the next module, which is
DevSecOps. Yeah. So I think before we kind of go into DevSecOps, to kind of put a bit of context of why are we kind of showing, and if you don't mind going back to the config YAML, Angel.
Yeah, no problem.
But I think to kind of maybe contextualize why we're kind of doing this, why are orbs really cool? Well, it's an ability to kind of import different type of services, and you'll see this in the DevSecOps section next, by using Sneak and things like that. But what's really cool about this jobs and this config YAML is that it's kind of a central repository for your entire CI/CD pipeline. So traditionally, if there are any DevOps engineers, please raise your hand. But you can kind of, traditionally when creating a CI/CD pipeline, having a bunch of different kind of disparate pieces, and not having I would say, writing your scripts and having the run during certain windows, or attaching it to kind of like certain builds, and not really having a central place to kind of, to centralize everything. When one DevOps engineer or one, when those engineers kind of like they leave the company or they're on vacation and something goes wrong and people are like, oh my God, like what is going on? How do we fix this? Where do I even go? The entire point of like these quote unquote modernization workshop is that as we are moving into, as more and more companies are, moving into the cloud or moving into like a hybrid model, the most important thing is to be able to, well, the most important thing for any technology business is to be able to kind of push out features and like, products faster. And that is why like we are kind of showing you kind of the power of this config YAML file, to be able to kind of like one, run like your test jobs, and then two, as what Angel will be showing you in just a little bit, kind of instrumenting and integrating other applications and services as part of your CI/CD pipeline, in the same way that you've been running everything else. So just wanted to kind of add that little bit right there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is stuff that if you're not doing it already, you're going to be doing it, and it's encroaching on developers as well, right? So like you're not going to be safe in the future. That's my prediction, at least. I've been in this business a long time, and I can tell you that from when I started years and years ago, decades ago, developers are expected to know a lot more about operations. And actually, I've always felt that we as developers and should know more, which is why I've always kind of lived in both worlds all the time, even before DevOps was kind of a thing, right? So thanks, Eugene, for that. So now that we talked about continuous integration, and I kind of didn't touch on it, but let me go over it really, really quickly before I jump into the next concept. But CI is essentially a way of basically developing software, right? It's a modern way of developing software, where essentially what you're doing is, as a developer, you're committing your code as frequently as possible, and then you're pushing those changes to a shared repository, so that you're basically socializing your code changes and your code software development. And the reason why you're doing this is, back in the day when we were developing software without like continuous integration, we would work in isolation and then post our code to some network share or drive somewhere, and then we would wait like 2 or 3 weeks, maybe longer, for a code review. With continuous integration, right, you're using automation to help you kind of essentially build a feedback loop. And the idea behind that feedback loop is to let you know when your software changes have problems, right, or they have bugs or whatever. And again, right, we're running tests to ensure that we're validating and doing some quality assurance around the code changes that we're making. Now, again, right, tests aren't always 100% because they test different things. And if you don't have a test for a specific edge case or case, you're not going to find it. But in general, we should be doing a pretty good job of writing tests and then also running those tests with the automation. So continuous integration is just that concept of, committing code as frequently as possible, pushing those changes upstream to a shared branch, and then, or a shared branch or repository, and then people on your team can also pull those changes down. So it's just an easier, quicker, more consistent way of working when you're developing software. And again, these things are I don't say they're super new, but they're fairly new in adoption and implementation. And it seems to be being majorly adopted by tons of teams. So if you're not doing it already, you probably will be. And this is a good kind of primer to educating you on that. So we talked about developing software, right? Continuous integration. So that's kind of like in the developer realm, right? And generally, continuous integration has testing. We also have this concept of security, right? So now with tools that are like more modern, like Sneak, which was one of our partners, they're empowering developers to essentially build tests, some security tests for their code, and not necessarily building tests, but they basically can test your application for you. And what they're doing is testing for application vulnerability. So if there's any kind of weird things or vulnerable things in your dependencies, which happens a lot, right? Lately, we've been getting a lot of security issues, right, from different vendors and companies, and a lot of them are being caused by upstream dependencies, open source dependencies, right? So these companies are using open source software that are built by someone else, and they don't really understand or don't really look at what's going on, and they're not catching these vulnerabilities that are now embedded in their software, right? So SolarWinds is a good example from last year that was a huge hack caused by infected upstream vulnerabilities, right? So, or packages, the open source development packages that were used in those libraries, or those libraries that were used in that project. But DevSecOps is this concept of now implementing security capabilities or tests or scans inside of your CI/CD pipeline. So what we're going to do is build a quick a DevSecOps job, right? Or DevSecOps-ish job. And we're going to use Sneak. So let's, as you can see, we had, this is what your file should look like, right? And now we're going to create a new job called Scan App. So this is the code that we're going to copy and paste. Oh, go back one. Sorry about that. We're going to copy and paste. So let's go ahead and copy that. I'm going to paste it into my editor. And now I have this new job, right, called Scan App. As I go in, I'm going to collapse these up so that we can be a little bit clearer on what's going on. And again, I have this job called Scan App. We're going to run this in a Docker image again, and on Executor, right, using the same image because we can. And then we're going to run a steps. I'm going to skip over the stuff I already covered just for time's sake. And then we're going to create a new run command. And in this run command, we're going to call it Sneak application files, right? So it's just another name for the job. Since Sneak actually is or since our application is a node application, we're going to have to run npm install. Now notice, right, from the last job, we used a node orb. I skipped that this time on purpose, right? So remember when I use this instead of the run command, it's the same thing that we did up here. With this node, using the node orb, but this time I skipped it, right? And we're just going to do a node npm install. And here it is, right? So this is how we implement a Sneak scan. If we look back up here, I'm going to collapse this again. Oh, I don't know what I did there, but let's close that. We don't need to be in that. Okay, let's try this again. So collapse. Okay. So the Sneak orb is right here, right? So we have the definition for the Sneak orb, and this is how basically I'm saying, hey, I want to use the Sneak orb here in this as a command, and I'm going to use the Sneak command, right? And this command is called scan, and what we're going to do here is essentially give it two parameters. Now, this fail and issue command, it should be set to true. I'm setting it to false because I know there's going to be some failures, and I just want to go happy path with this demonstration. So, but you set this to true, and it will stop your pipeline build if it detects any vulnerabilities, which it should, right? You should normally have this as true. For this example, I want to keep it false. So now that I have that installed or defined, it's pretty much going to be looking like the file will look like this, right? So now we have this full-blown file, and we're going to jump over to to infrastructures code. I'm going through this because I've been having issues occasionally with this demo, so I'm going to jump into jump through this whole exercise, and then I also want people to be able to get some support from us if they're having issues with their pipelines when we run it. So are there any questions about DevSecOps? I know I kind of went over that quickly, but I'm just doing it in the interest of time so that we have some time to answer any questions and help people get through this. I don't think there's any questions at the moment, so we're going to jump into now infrastructure as code, right? So infrastructure as code, I'm sure some of you or most of you have already, got your hands dirty, or you have used infrastructure as code. Essentially what that is it's the ability to create infrastructures such as EC2 instances or ECS clusters in AWS, right? And you can do that instead of going in, like Eugene showed you how to do a couple things today in the AWS graphical user interface console, which, that's great for onesies, twosies, kind of things. You're doing small things, but imagine if you have to run 1,000 servers or like 1,000 EC2 instances. That graphical user interface is going to become pretty unusable, right? Really, really quickly. Infrastructure as code enables you to define all of those cloud resources in code, right? So you're able to manage all your things in a stable, in my opinion, more easily maintainable projects such as code. Terraform is in particular we're going to be using. So that's what infrastructure as code gets you, and it gives you some benefits here, right? Like some cost reduction in time, and also probably in money as well, because time is money, right? Also, it reduces errors, it increases the speed of deployments, right? Standardizes your provisioning of resources. So how many times have we, fat fingered or misclicked something, and it just totally trashes our system. And then we don't understand what happened because you don't have any kind of reference, right, to go back to. You just click something and it caused a problem. With code, you can actually go back and see, like, oh, I put a semicolon, or I put the wrong value here, right? So those are the benefits of using infrastructure as code, which is why I want to kind of go into that in this part of the workshop. Now, I'm just talking about Terraform real quick, because what we're going to do next is setting up the concept of infrastructure as code, so that we can then build a Docker image job, right? So I just want to kind of touch on Terraform and make sure the main thing that we have, the main thing that that we have is your organization. So if you went into Terraform Cloud, right, and created this organization, you need to change the code in your fork Terraform project. So let's go back over to the editor. I have this thing called Terraform. We're going to do ECS here, and I believe it's in the main TF, right? Yep. So what you want here is, as it says here, you want to change the organization to your organization name. And mine, my organization in Terraform Cloud is Datapunks. And I think that's all we need for this particular file, which it is. Just make sure that you have your org name here, or at least in your code, and then save that, right? Also, I think this is already set up. If you have this variables.tf, you want this value here and this variable called key pair to be the EE dash default dash key pair value. I think it's already there, so you really don't have to mess with that as long as it's there, and it should be good to go. So that's why I brought up Terraform at this point. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that those values have to match what's in your Terraform Cloud when you created the organizations in the previous steps. So the reason why you need that is Terraform will save the state of your infrastructure when it creates it. So let's go ahead and talk about Docker images and containers. Again, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have experienced a Docker container at some point, whether it's locally or you're actually deploying things to infrastructures. In this case, I wanted to do a call out before we get into the we get into building a job that builds a Docker image. I mentioned that we're going to be building a Graviton 2 powered cluster. Again, Amazon has created this awesome new EC2 instances and the capability of powering those instances within ARM processor. If you're not familiar with ARM, it's essentially a processor type architecture that is not compatible with the standard Intel or x86 architectures, right? So they're two different things. This has been a long time coming. ARM is processors that have been around for a very long time. They power things like your cell phone, a lot of smart devices and such. And Amazon recently has added this capability because developers also deploy to ARM powered compute, right? So, and the fact that they're incompatible, this gives you the ability to do just that, right? Build artifacts or binaries for ARM. Because the fact that the instruction sets on the x86 architecture, which is the more common architecture, they're incompatible, right? So let's go ahead and pick up from where we left off. Now we left off at our scan app, right? Now we're going to do what we want to do is with this application, we want to package it up. We want our pipeline to package this Docker or this application into a Docker image, so that then we can deploy it to our ECS cluster later. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and jump down to this thing here, and we're going to copy this, and we're going to go back over to the config file. Let me get rid of this here. Make sure that you update your Terraform files, please. And then we're going to paste that here, right? So now we have this job called build Docker image, right? And what this is going to do is essentially take this code changes that we made. It's going to package it up into a Docker image. Now, this looks a little different than the jobs that we were working with before, right? And I'll show you the differences. The machine key, right? So our executor now has turned into a machine. We're no longer using a Docker container to run our code in. We're going to use a full-blown virtual machine as our pipeline executor for this specific job. And in this case, we're going to use an Ubuntu image, right? Ubuntu Linux. And we're also going to tell it to, since we're going to be building and packaging this application up in a Docker image that's going to run on a Graviton 2 or an ARM EC2 or ECS cluster, we need to ensure that this is going to run, right? So remember, the x86 architecture and ARM architectures are incompatible. So we want to tell our machine instance, our executor, to use a resource class, which is basically a type of machine. We want to use an ARM, right? An ARM medium, by the way. So that's it, right? Now we've told our pipeline or our job to run in an ARM capable or an ARM powered runtime. And essentially you're going to need that, right? Because again, they're incompatible. So what we're going to do here is another checkout. This is another orb, right? So we have our Docker orb up here. And again, we just encapsulate some functionality and make it easy. This Docker check is going to use your Docker login credentials that we created. Remember the environment variables for Docker, I think it's Docker user and Docker password, right? It's just going to do like a quick check. Hey, are these things good? Otherwise, it'll fail your build until you fix those environment variables with the right values. Once you have that in place, we're going to use the orb again, and we're just encapsulating the Docker build command, right? And we're going to say, you got to give that Docker build command an image name, right? You have to name your image. In this case, we're going to use our Docker login environment variable. That's what it was, Docker login. And then we're going to also use the CircleCI project name, which is an environment variable only available to you during a runtime. So when we execute code on this machine, virtual machine, that runtime itself has specific environment variables that CircleCI makes available to that runtime. So this is just a nice way to kind of keep things standard, right? So you can use this, you can name it whatever you like. But make sure that it's your username is in front. Otherwise, it's going to be denied when you try to push the Docker Hub. And then here's a tag, right? It's a typical tag. This pipeline tag here or variable. It's again, it's CircleCI specific, and it's essentially a way to tie your image back to the pipeline number. So if we go back to the dashboard at CircleCI, that pipeline number is represented here in this 132, right? So this is a pipeline. It's just a way to pin it to a job, right? So if you're ever looking for like, oh, which thing did which Docker image belongs to which pipeline, that's where that comes from, right? And it'll be like 132 or 133 for the next run. And then finally, we have a Docker push command, right? So we're going to push this to the registry in Docker Hub. And that's it. It's pretty simple. And we're going to use that same tag, right? The same naming convention. So we have our Docker build commands. Let's go ahead and look at the next module, which is continuous deployment. This is where the fun starts. So I talked about continuous integration, right? That's kind of like the process of developing software. Now we're going to look at the other side of the CI/CD moniker, which is continuous deployment, the CD in CI/CD. And essentially, right, it's just automating deployments. And the way you do that consistently or reliably is by automating it and setting it up to a continuous delivery pipeline. Now, you don't always have to in your pipelines deploy something, right? I just like to show the full end-to-end capabilities of a robust continuous delivery pipeline. So let's just jump right into it. So we're going to be using Amazon Elastic Container Service. You can look up what that is if you have never seen it before, but essentially what it is Amazon's really cool, I would say less complicated version of Kubernetes, right? So it does kind of the same thing. It orchestrates containers and schedules them for you, but it's less complicated, kind of hides all the complications of running your own Kubernetes cluster. So if you're new to containers and such, I would definitely insist that you take a stab at deploying some of these infrastructures that you have in an ECS system before you explore Kubernetes. I use this all the time to teach people how to kind of use containers if they're new to containers in a more realistic scenario. If you're starting out with containers, definitely check out ECS before jumping into Kubernetes. I firmly believe that this is a great way to kind of indoctrinate yourself into this whole kind of container madness, and then you can slowly jump over to Kubernetes, and you'll have a nice foundational understanding of what containers are, how to orchestrate them, and then figure out how Kubernetes actually does the work, which is very, very similar to how Amazon ECS works. But again, it's just kind of an ECS is an extracted layer, abstracted layer, right? So it's a layer up from actually using a Kubernetes cluster. So let's go ahead and build a Amazon job. So now I'm not going to have any more of the code snippets, right? That we showed. Like here's a previous file. We're just going to go ahead and copy this right into our editor, and we're going to create a deployment job, I believe, right? Is that what it is? Yeah. Yes. So let me go ahead and collapse this. We have our Docker image job, building our Docker image job completed. Now we're going to deploy AWS ECS. Again, we have the machine executor. We're going to use ARM again, since we're going to deploy to an ARM cluster or ARM powered cluster. We're going to create a file, right? And here's where we're going to leverage our Terraform token. This is essentially creating a file for credentials so that our runtime can connect to the Terraform cloud and check the state, right? So once you have that all set up, here's our friendly orbs again, right? We're going to use the Terraform orb this time. And in this case, we're just going to install a version of Terraform, right? So our orb has a capability to define a Terraform version. Terraform has many versions. It gets updated quite often. So this is a really handy tool. This orb is really handy in installing this stuff right into your runtimes. And it lets you install the versions that you want. So Terraform has this concept of initialization and plan, which essentially are like, first initialize or Terraform, which downloads all the providers and plugins that you're using for Terraform. In this case, we're using the AWS providers, so it's going to download that onto the runtime for Terraform to use. And then the plan is just essentially like a preview or a simulated run of the Terraform plan. In this case, we're just going to do a quick plan to make sure that we understand or have a tracking of what's going on, or some audit trail of what's going on or what's going to happen with our Terraform run. And then I kind of mix it up a little bit. We're going to do a run command now. And then finally, we're just going to call it Terraform apply. In Terraform, it's a CLI, right? And you run Terraform apply, and that basically executes your Terraform code, right? And in this case, it's going to run this ECS, the code in this ECS folder. And it's going to create our ECS cluster. It's going to create all the things, a VPC, a security group. It's going to create all the things that it needs to actually provision and run this ECS cluster. And as you can see here, Terraform has this concept of variables. That's what this variable, remember, we were changing the variable file. Let me open that up again real quick. These are the variables that you're kind of feeding in that command. As you can see here, we have a dash var Docker image name. So we're just setting the Docker image name to what we had built earlier, right? And that's, again, a clean way to keep things consistent with the image names and stuff. And then also you're going to feed that image name into Terraform so that it can tell ECS which Terraform container to deploy. And finally, we're going to export the final, well, once everything's created, Terraform has this concept of output, and it will output our load balancer host name into a variable called endpoint, which will then pass along to subsequent pipelines or subsequent jobs in our pipeline. So now that I've done the deploy to ECS, let's go ahead and finish this up because we're running out of time. We're going to build a smoke test job. So go ahead and copy this. This essentially will test our deployment, right? Again, this lab is designed to show you how to build a robust pipeline. And these are just some of the concepts that you'll probably have to tackle when building a pipeline, or at least you should be, right? So if you're deploying something, you should always test that deployment works. I'm just gonna plow through these real quick. We already know about our ARM executor. Right here is an attached workspace. So we saved our endpoint into from a previous job. This is just a way to bring in information from previous jobs, right? Because there's no way to kind of associate or bring information from job to job. No easy way, since everything runs in its own runtime, right? But CircleCI has this capability of what we call workspaces. So you can save files and stuff that you'll need in subsequent jobs, and you can attach that information to a directory. In this case, we're going to do this to our temp folder and in an ECS folder that we saved in this persist to workspace in previous job. So once we have that up, we're going to do our smoke test. In this test folder, we have this concept of smoke testing. I created these bash scripts using a framework that I got online from an open source project called smoke.sh. You can check it out later. But what this does is test the deployment, right? And then we're just going to execute that job. So we built a smoke test for deployment smoke test job, which is awesome because we definitely want to do that, make sure that our stuff is tight. Now, by the way, you can get the lowdown on all the things in that config block. Blowing past this really, really quickly again to get us to where we need to be because we're almost ready to deploy something. So now we're going to destroy that. We create a destroy command. Obviously, right, if we deployed our changes and we created this infrastructure, we don't need it once we know that our builds have passed. So you want a mechanism to destroy all those things, right? And that's where we're going to build a destroy command job. So just go ahead and copy and paste that. And we're going to go ahead and now jump over to the next step, right? So, well, let me go over that real quick. As you can see, I'm just using the same thing, right? It's just a destroy command. And we're creating the things that we've already seen before for Terraform Cloud, the install, the init, And then this is the new bit here, right? We're just going to use the Terraform orb to run a destroy command. And then we're just telling it where our Terraform code lives, which is in that ECS folder. And Terraform knows what to do once you run that destroy command, right? Finally, we created all our jobs, right? We already defined all the things we want our pipeline to do. Now we need a way to orchestrate these jobs and basically, tell the pipeline which things to run and how to run them and when to run them. So this is what we use workflows for, right? So workflows exist to basically orchestrate these jobs. In this case, I've copy and pasted that workflow bit from the lab. And I've named it build, right? So the workflow is called build. And since workflows orchestrates jobs, we need to create a jobs key, right? And then within that jobs key, we tell the workflow which jobs we want to run. I want to run all the things, all these awesome jobs that we created. So this is what it looks like, right? It's going to run tests, it's going to scan apps, and it's going to run the build underscore Docker image. Now, the stuff in red here has a dependency. If you see a require statement, that means it's going to not run until this build Docker image is successfully run. So all three of these will run at the same time, right? But in order for us to deploy an AWS ECS cluster, we're going to need that Docker image to exist, right? So that's why I have a dependency. And by default, CircleCI will run your jobs and your workflows concurrently or in parallel. In order for you to create dependencies, you're going to need this require statement, right? Just know that that's what that means. And you can read more on that later on. But at the end of the day, you'll see what that looks like in the graph in a moment. Again, we're going to run our smoke test, right? In order for us to run a smoke test, we need our deploy AWS or our cluster to be up and running. And in order for that to happen, the deploy underscore AWS ECS job has to run, right? And this is a cool job that you probably haven't seen. So the approve destroy job is basically of type approval. So this is a specific CircleCI specific job. And essentially what it is a manual approval job. So this will stop the pipeline. Normally it would go through if I didn't have that and continue on, but I wanted to stop for the demo so that, we can kind of troubleshoot things if anything happens or if anybody has questions. But this will present you a button in the dashboard, which you'll see later, that will stop the pipeline in its tracks and will only continue when a manual action is taken, like clicking the button in the to proceed in the dashboard. And finally, I want to run my destroy AWS ECS job, right? And we have a require statement, again, another dependency based on the approval destroy button, right? So we've created all the things I think that we need. Let's jump over to the lab. Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, it's just all the good details about that stuff. Now, finally, we're going to trigger the pipeline, right? So congratulations. If you've copied and pasted all of this stuff into that config file, that it'll look like this, right? Or it'll look like the thing here in this final file, we'll be able to now trigger this pipeline. And in order to do that, right, we're just going to go ahead and do a git commit. And then, so let's commit our changes, right? I have all these changes. Make sure you save those files, by the way. So like here, I haven't saved anything. So let me save my file. And I essentially have one commit. You'll have more, right? Like if you change your Terraform file, your variable file, you should have like 3 or 4 things, and that's okay. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and do a commit in my my terminal, or I'm going to try it again. Commit in my terminal, which is the git commit. Right now, I've committed my change, and now I'm going to do a git push. Now, the git push is where you will trigger CircleCI to run your pipeline. So let's go ahead and stage this real quick so you can see what happens. So let me go back. I'm going to go ahead and git push. Ready? So I just push my changes up, jump back over to the dashboard. The CircleCI platform will pick up those changes, and here you go. I made some code changes, right, to my config, and now if you click in, remember when I said those 3 applications are going to run and that were in the workflow, or those 3 jobs, I'm sorry, these 3 jobs, they're running in parallel, right? Because I don't have any require statements. As you can see, it's super fast, right? I've already scanned the application with Sneak, right? And it looks like everything passed. If you want to see, we do have some vulnerabilities, but again, I totally set that to false so it wouldn't stop our pipeline, because I wanted to show you the build. We ran some unit tests, right? So if you can see here, remember when I said the job name, right? Run tests. These are all the things that we labeled. And if you look at the artifacts, we can check out here. You can see the test results for my test, right? So see, everything's pinned to the pipeline. So your team can go back if you have any issues, or you need to do some troubleshooting or forensics. You have all that really nicely packaged inside of the pipeline. And you can also, I believe, see the tests here. So we had 2 tests that are passing, and you can see using the Insights API, you can see like a graph of all the tests and the averages of those runs, right? But we're going to go back into our pipeline. And let's take a look here. So now we built our Docker image, right? And it's pushed the image up to Docker Hub, right? Which is really nice. And now we have AWS deploying, Terraform deploying to AWS is creating all of that stuff in my Terraform code for me. Like I said, it's creating subnets, VPCs, ASGs, autoscale groups, the EC2 instances, all the things I need for my ECS cluster to be able to deploy this awesome new image that we've pushed up to Docker Hub. So this is going to take about 5 minutes. I'm going to shut up for a moment and see if there's any questions. Have any of you or all of you kind of, in the same boat, or not the same boat, but have all of you kind of been successful in this? If you have any issues, or right now would be a great time if you're deploying and waiting for your deploys to finish, ask some questions. I'm here to answer them.
If you don't have any questions, like, how's everyone doing?
Yeah,
I think it's early over there.
Yeah, my voice is going, but hopefully we'll be able to get through this. Yeah, I've been drinking lots of coffee, and it's been kind of cold here. I'm in the East Coast in New Jersey, and it's kind of chilly today, so it doesn't help with the voice. But yeah, I hope that everyone is able to get this up and running. I guess you could see in the console, right, Eugene, of people's stuff being built. Are you seeing any deploys going on?
Yep. I mean, outside of the ones that I've already deployed, yep, I see
Awesome.
the most recent one being deployed. But yeah, like I would just also like to kind of add, like, if you are, like, if you didn't have, like, set up your GitHub account, you didn't, like, you don't have like a Docker Hub or any of that, you will be able, so this your Event Engine account will still be running for the next 24 hours. So you can spend, like, today or the evening of today to kind of get set up and run through this workshop yourself.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So I'm my AWS. What's going on here? All right, let me try something here. What happened to my AWS access? Oh boy, great. So this thing is creating stuff and I can't get to it. That's not good. Okay, so I won't be able to show my ECS cluster for some reason. All right, great. Thanks, team. Nah, it happens, right? Like normally this is how we log into our yeah. Oh, great. Okay. So I'll have to talk to my tech support teams. Let me see if I can get to it another way. I'll be here. Yeah, that's not good. Okay. Let me see, Amazon. That was there today. But anyway, when this is done, we should be able to. Do you have have you been kicking one off, Eugene, or no?
Yeah, let me see if I can
Yeah,
showcase
if you can share
mine.
your screen. Be nice to just show them like ECS in the cluster or whatever.
Give me 1 second.
Sure. No problem.
Where is this?
Oh, let me get this out of here. Figures I would lose my Amazon access during a demo, right? It's like, the
Why
joys
not?
of IT. It was there like right before we started. I don't know what happened. They're probably doing some maintenance or something.
So I kind of well, not accidentally. I probably shouldn't have deleted the ECS cluster already.
It's all good, man.
So
Well, if anything, everyone can see, right? Like what's going on. Let me. I can't imagine that. It's just I don't have access. I don't know what happened. So here we go. Unfortunately, I can't show you in the awesome AWS console because I can't access it. But essentially, it created my cluster. Right? Trust me, it exists. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the endpoint. Remember the endpoint variable that we had saved. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Hopefully the yeah. So there it is, right? I'm sorry I can't show you the Amazon console and the cluster itself, but this application is up and running right from our pipeline. And this application is running on an ECS, the Amazon Elastic Container Service cluster that is powered by Graviton 2 ARM compute nodes, right? So again, this is designed to show you a robust pipeline that is kind of the common pattern, right, in most organizations and teams. So let's just jump back over to our pipeline and look at it, like where it's at, what status it's in. Okay, cool. So our smoke test failed. So what this was doing was checking for the endpoint, and it got a bad
a
it got a
response.
a non-response. Now let's go ahead and rerun this since we know we already saw it running, right? So I'm going to rerun this workload from failed. So like I don't have to rerun all the things. I can just tell the system like, wait, something funky is happening. Now, the reason why it probably failed was there's still a disconnect, even though the system deployed it. EC2 may take like a minute or two to update its service, right? So that container is still in the process of being created when this smoke test deployed. Normally, I give it like a 90-second sleep. It might have needed 2 minutes, right? So now you see my smoke test deployed, my smoke test passed. Now I'll update like the sleep time to like 2 minutes in the future, so that just gives the system. I mean, you got to imagine you got to understand what's happening. We're creating essentially like, tens of thousands of dollars of infrastructure in essentially 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. So there's a lot of moving parts, and those moving parts need to kind of catch up with each other. And that's how like a cluster works. It's a little bit, and I hate to say it, like, when I was building data centers and deploying applications, it would be, like a year and a half project to just get something like this up and running, because I had to order servers, get data center allocation for power, network, all these things. With Amazon, it's like, a blue button and you got this these capabilities at the tip of your finger, right on the mouse click, which is pretty awesome. So we smoke tested our deployment. We know that these code changes have been deployed to a target environment, which is ECS. It actually deployed, it works. And now we don't need that infrastructure anymore, right? Our pipeline has been kind of vetted, right? Our changes have been vetted. They're all good. Now, again, here's that approval button. Remember the approval step I showed you? Right now, we're just going to destroy it, right? Because we don't need it. And if you go ahead and destroy that infrastructure, just click the approval button, and it's going to kick off our AWS or destroy underscore AWS ECS job. And now, if we go in here, it's just going to run up the executor. It's going to then just run that or the Terraform destroy command, and it will destroy all of that awesome infrastructure that we built using Terraform and AWS. So let's go back to the module here. Yeah, that's basically it, right? So we verified the application. You can destroy the application, which I highly recommend, especially if you're using your own account. If you're using the Event Engine, you don't really have to worry about it because Eugene and his team will take care of destroying all that stuff. But if you want to just click the approve button just to do it, because it's really cool to always be destroying things, right? I'm down with that. Go ahead and terminate your instances by just clicking that job and letting the job finish. But in summary, that was us showing you how to create a CI/CD pipeline in CircleCI and do some pretty awesome things using some pretty awesome concepts like CI/CD, DevSecOps, infrastructure as code using Terraform, building infrastructure using Amazon and their awesome resources, and then using CircleCI to orchestrate all of that using automation. So aside from that, I don't have anything else. Are there any questions? I'm here to answer questions if anyone's having issues. Totally down to do that, and looking forward to any kind of questions or comments. Please ask.
Like if everyone did you all enjoy this workshop?
Of course they did. A+. Nah, seriously though, like if you're having issues, let us know. We have a few more minutes. I'll hang on for a few more minutes. I know it was a long-winded workshop. It tends to be that way because, again, we're like bringing a lot of concepts to the forefront and jamming them in 2.5 hours, which we were hoping to get this done sooner. But, things happen, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
hopefully
Paul, we'll be able to send the recordings later.
Yes.
And I think as a follow-up, did we get that email from Brittany that we can kind of share in the chat?
You can just email me, angel@circleci.com. If you want to follow up on this or need some help with it, I'm totally open to just, send me an email. Also, if you want to give us some feedback on this, always looking forward to that. I understand the format is a little weird. There's a lot of prerequisite stuff to get done, and that kind of consumes a lot of it. But again, you can always go back. That's why we did it the way we did it. You can always go back to the lab and, work at your own pace with your own account. That way, if you felt left behind, don't worry. We designed it so that you can actually go back and do this, because I've sat through many workshops where I'm like, oh, what? I'm lost, and introducing new concepts, and then I kind of miss out. Hopefully you won't have that problem, but if you do, just hit me up at angel@circleci.com, and we'll help you.
And thank you, Camilo. So I think one thing about one comment about there's a lot of kind of prerequisites of setting this up. Well, I mean, I would say that it's better than trying to create your own vulnerability scanning tool, or trying to import a library and running it yourself. Instead of just kind of using Sneak, right? And so I think for folks that are newer to the kind of space, this just makes everything a lot easier. And the really only thing you really got to do is just sign up. And again, like when you're at an enterprise company, you're probably doing partnerships, like, with some of these companies as well, to make like, their services or their solutions even more integrated, as like their, as like, your platform. But yeah, like I think, what Angel did today kind of really shows the power of the configurability, like through the use of orbs, but also kind of the readability of this config YAML, right? It's the map, it's the skeleton, it's the, so on and so forth of how you can create an extensive, like full on like pipeline, using AWS resources. But more importantly, right, like I don't just want to be kind of like a show for AWS, but I think from a developer standpoint, it's just going to make everything a lot easier. It's going to centralize a lot of things. And like, I think the biggest thing, well, I kind of just repeating myself at this point, but as a former engineer, right, being like, I would have loved to have used something like CircleCI instead of kind of like, building things out, writing scripts for like my Jenkins servers, to kind of like build, and like, when it doesn't work, like it's like you have to do all these like manual things. And then especially if I didn't build like a certain pipeline, and like, one of my coworkers who built a pipeline for an application and they leave and they're doing it different than us or different than me, and something is wrong, and there's like, something in production that goes wrong and you can't fix that. Like this kind of helps like really standardize, really kind of, standardize and make things so much simpler to kind of like, work through. So anyways, Angel, thanks again, as always, kind of powering through this. And thank you to the audience for joining. Again, Angel at CircleCI.com. If you have any questions for him, if you want to follow up, either with the CircleCI like sales team or anything like that. But anyways, I think if there are any other questions or comments, Angel, I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Thanks everyone again. I know these virtual workshops are weird at times, but I really appreciate you all showing up. And hopefully you got your pipeline to run. And again, if you have any issues, hit me up. I'm more than happy to chat with you and spend some time figuring out what happened. But thank you all, and till the next time, have a good night. Thank you.
Maximilian, we're going to be sending out in the email, so don't worry about the recording.
Oh yeah. Our team at CircleCI, you should be getting the link for that. And again, if it doesn't come, let me know and I'll definitely get it to you. Not a problem. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Angel.
All right.